We just made sure that we really took care of him. And I was juggling that along with filming content. So I'm going out and I'm filming content and people just have no idea what is going on in my house. They got no idea. No idea. After being able to speak about it and just ponder on it myself, I just reflect on a lot of the good stuff that's happened. Those are the things that really keep you warm when it gets cold outside. All of those funny things that happened or just good things that happened or whatever, and it just look back at everything with a fun heart. I would love for people to see how much perseverance can do something for somebody. For me, like, a lot of where I am today has come through perseverance, and if you're going through something or somebody is going through something, perseverance will definitely help you.
Chuckie, welcome to The Meaning of Men. If I was meeting you for the first time, how would you in a few sentences sum up who you are and what you do?
I ultimately am a music lover to the core, and loving music ultimately has helped me to make a living in my life, basically, by doing various different things. So, I'm a DJ, I'm a promoter, I'm a podcaster, and I guess in a sense, a cultural commentator. When we talk about podcasting, I've been doing that for over 10 years now. Talking about music. Well, it stemmed from talking about music, essentially. Me and a really close friend of mine, even before then, to be fair, like, I just sat down and was really intrigued and excited about some of the things that were happening at the time. And I just wanted to talk about it. And I needed an outlet to be able to do that. And there wasn't a place to do that at the time. Podcasting wasn't how it is today. So because I had this ambition to want to be on radio, I had a setup in my house where I was doing radio shows and stuff like that. And I would just talk about music and not do it in a radio format. Literally just chat to myself about music. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, in and around that, being able to just like play in so many different places, DJ for artists, and now back into doing promotional stuff, which has led me to building a couple of really big brands. So yeah.
I want to give people a sense of the conversation that we're going to have today.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, it's going to be a bit of a family affair. You're my cousin, and it'll be interesting because some of the stuff you'll be saying obviously will relate very much to me as well.
Yeah.
We're going to be focusing quite a lot of this conversation around loss, and specifically around the loss of your stepdad, Peter, my uncle.
Yeah.
And
I call him my bonus dad.
Your bonus dad, I like that.
Mm.
The reason I'm really excited to dive into this with you today is because a lot of people listening will have lost someone in their lives. And I think sometimes it's hard to articulate really how you feel and express that emotion. And I think one of the gifts that you have is how well you articulate yourself. And whenever I've spoken to you about anything, but particularly this, you've put it in such a clear and concise way that's helped me process the emotion myself, but also understand where you're coming from as well. And I think people listening today will hopefully be able to take a lot away from how you articulate dealing with that loss, but also how you've processed that moving forward. But we're also going to touch on some other things as well. We're going to touch on your career and the resilience that's taken and just the sheer willingness to make it in that industry. And I think, again, a lot of the stuff that you'll say today will be very relevant for people, whatever kind of line of work and whatever kind of life they have.
Yeah.
And then also talking around identity. I think this is going to be a big part of the show too. And you've got so many different angles to look at it from. Obviously your music career, where you grew up, your roots, and it will be just great to sort of dive into a little bit of how you see yourself, Chuckie, Lloyd, like what kind of makes you tick. Before we get into that, give me a sense of where you grew up, who you grew up with, that sort of like that family household, what that sort of looked like when you were growing up as a kid.
So I was the only child. I always have these memories of like being super young. My parents split up when I was very young, but I've got these small, vivid memories of like being in the front room and my dad having a DJ set up, um, and playing records and stuff like that, watching my dad DJ and whatnot. Um, but as I said, my mum and my dad split up when I was very, very young. I went to live with my uncle, which was your dad. But even in that, I still got to see my dad a lot. So my parents splitting up didn't affect how I was going to see my parents. And I think, if speaking to my dad and even my mum about it, I know that when they did split up, my dad in particular was probably very worried that he wasn't going to see me the same because I think when two people have a child together and they are coming to that point of splitting up, I think, especially if a man leaves the house, it's the idea of not being able to wake up and see your kid in the morning, not being able, thinking that you're going to miss moments and stuff like that. For me, I still saw my dad. We ended up moving to an estate in Norfolk. To paint a picture of Norfolk, Norfolk um, was a predominantly white area. It's changed completely now. And in my generation of growing up there, it was, I want to say it was becoming a little bit more multicultural. Do you know what I mean? Just a little bit. So, on the subways, if you was going down the subways and stuff like that, you would still see NF written in the subways, National Front, that was a political party at the time, which is uh, what would be the equivalent of that? Maybe like EDL or something, where you'd find maybe more the far right guys that were there. Um, uh, my school as well was predominantly white, but then I would say as well that my year was that multicultural year where there was maybe a few more Asians, a few more blacks and stuff like that, and we kind of almost stuck together in a sense. Although my first friend in school, Gary Wilmore, white boy, me and him got on like a house on fire. I used to fancy his cousin. So yeah, I grew up in and around that. But also another point that is really important to mention is that before I could even speak, I was close with my cousin Elliot. Yeah, Elliot is the same age as me. He's got a brother called David, which is my cousin, obviously, and David is just a tiny bit younger than me. So growing up, it was always me, Elliot, and David. So although I didn't have no brothers, they were like my brothers. They're my cousins, but they were like my brothers. And so as we got older, my friends on my estate were their friends, and their friends on their estate was my friends. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, we grew up at a time where things were you were just outside. Do you get what I'm saying? We were just outside. It was a very community led. Um, they were very community led areas. So you kind of knew your neighbors. If I wanted to go and see my friends, I had to go and knock for them. Um, and we were just doing a lot of things in regards to activity, playing football, skating, and then music. That was another thing. I actually learned how to DJ through being on Elliot's estate. There was a guy called Jason Speed. He was the only one who had decks. We used to go to his house, and and everyone would play around on his decks, but then everyone would leave, and then I would stay, and then he would then teach me a little bit more and whatever else, and like you know, from that point on, me and my friends, we just made a crew because that was one of the things that you did do. Like I had a friend from my school called Wesley Carter. He became one of my really good friends, um, and I introduced him to Elliot. We were all into music. It was like garage at the time, and yeah, we made a crew. And originally, I was kind of DJing in that crew. We called ourselves Fatal Attraction. So at that point, my my friends and my direction started to change a bit.
And at what stage did music become an avenue for a career? So at what point did it move from being something that you were really passionate about, interested in, to, okay, I could actually make a livelihood from this?
Um, Not until very late on, to be honest with you, because the industry at the time was so much smaller. You, I, I didn't even, I didn't even see it industry. It was so small. I didn't see it industry. A lot of us, um, especially at one point, we were just doing it for love. It was just a fun thing to do. And when I went to my first under 18s, which Wesley Carter took me there. Um, the second time I went there, I managed to just blag my way on the stage. And when I managed to get on the stage, because she was like, "Yeah," I MC. I was like, I can MC. Would you let me MC?" She was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." So then, like, I went on the stage, and then I started MC, and then I thought, and then the crowd was going mad and whatnot, and I thought, nah, this is me. Like, I just love this. And I ended up going around and doing a lot of different under 18s and stuff like that. But again, it was not, there was no feeling of, this is going to change my life. It's going to do this for me. This was just a very fun thing to do. And that started to, like, things started to change a little bit because musically it was changing. It was, like, grime was becoming a lot more prominent, and I loved grime. I loved it. But I knew that it wasn't my story, and I felt like this was an opportunity for me to, like, start getting back into playing music, because I was always still buying music whenever I could. A lot later on, I was at a shop, and I met this guy called Reggie Styles, and I told him that I wanted to start, like, doing something within music, and he was like, "Oh, I have a street team." He worked for Sony, and he was building a street team at the time. So I joined that street team, and we would just go around giving out flyers and stuff like that. I then ended up meeting a lady called Jackie Davidson, who ran a company called Hard Zone, and it was a PR company. She wanted me to run a street team there, and she became a mentor to me, and I learned the music industry through her. I knew nothing about the industry up till that moment. As I said, I didn't even see it industry. I didn't even understand a infrastructure. I didn't know nothing about any of that until I met Jackie Davidson, and that's when I realized, okay, there are many different things that you can do within this music industry. What is going to be mine?
It's interesting because looking back when we were growing up, you were one of my early images of what success looked like. Because looking back to, like, my earliest memories of us and going to some of those shows that you did and just seeing the reactions of people and walking down the streets and having people recognize you and wanting to have photos with you when I was a young teenager, kind of seeing that, it was really quite something to see that within my own family. And I think combined with that, just how humble you are as well. And what that taught me was successful people can be very down to earth, very appreciative of who they are and where they come from. Um, and that taught me, like, a really interesting lesson around what success looked like at the time. Um, I want to get an idea and a sense of maybe some of the struggles that you've had throughout your career, because this is obviously such a competitive environment, and it's easy to look at you now and look at the success that you've had and maybe forget some of the barriers that you've had to overcome. I'd love to get an idea of maybe some of those pushbacks, some of those difficult times, and how you had the mental resolve to keep going and keep having the belief in yourself that this was going to work out and you were going to become the success that you are.
Well, do you know what? I want to go back to the earlier success stuff, because, like, those days there, I never felt like it was success. It didn't feel successful. It was just, again, like, at the time we were just doing something that we just love doing, and I was able to do stuff. But this is just how my mind would have been seeing it at the time. Going outside and then people recognizing me and stuff like that was like, okay, that's, something's working and something's happening, and it felt weird. But, like, I would have tied success at that point. I would have tied success to money. I would have looked at, well, you know what, I'm making loads of money, and I'm that I know that at that point, being young, I would have felt successful then. But for me, it was just like, I just love this. This is just cool. Like we're just a part of something, and we're just cutting through. But though, I say all of that to say this. Early on, there was no money in it. So you are tied between doing something that you really want to do, and you're understand trying to find your way within it as well too, and you're not getting no money for it. So you still need to find a way to live, you know. Um, you still need to find a way to earn a little bit of money and stuff like that. And once that does come, um, it's a weird one because I think for me, it's always felt like even when I was working with Jackie, it always kind of felt like I was self-employed to a degree, and with that, it was like sometimes you'd make a certain amount, sometimes you wouldn't make a certain amount. Um, and I'm focusing on the money now because there's there was a perspective shift a little bit later on, where things started to become very difficult. I was doing I After working with Jackie, I decided that I was gonna focus on doing DJ bookings and also promoting because this was going really, really well now. I was getting a lot of bookings. I was doing events and they was doing really well. Um, Now I'm starting to feel a little bit of success because I'm making some money on top of that too. I could leave this job, and I'm just very, very, very busy. But then came a point where I just stopped getting bookings. This was like after a period of years, I just wasn't getting so much bookings anymore. I was not really making so much money anymore. The events that I was doing, like, it was a struggle to get people into the events that I was doing. I remember I did an event called Skin Tie. This was funny. This was at a time where, I think like girls were wearing like they were wearing like these particular. It was almost like pedal pushers, but they weren't pedal pushers though. But it was a thing, and I was like, yeah, I want to do an event called Skin Tie. I did an event called Skin Tie. Syrian, it just didn't bang. It just didn't bang. Um, and you lose money in that because you're like you're fronting your own thing or whatever, and you're kind of banking on the fact that it's going to be busy. It doesn't, and it was just really, it just became really, really, really tough. Um, and I hit a really big financial rut where, um, like I'm trying things. I'm trying to do other things. I can't. People are not answering the phone. Um, I don't feel like I'm getting an opportunity. I was trying to get on radio so hard that wasn't happening. I was like, I used to. That's a whole nother story. But I used to go outside. I wanted to be on One Extra so bad, and I used to go outside everywhere that they were and give out thousands of mix CDs. That was one of my hustles. I used to burn mix CDs and give them out for free. And I used to go everywhere and just give them out everywhere because I always just thought they would be good. If people saw them, if people heard it, my face is on the flyer, they will recognize that I was the person who did it, and then I would become a person who people would want to book or people would talk about and all of that. So that had its high and then it had its low because it just nothing, literally nothing was working. And I'll give you an example of how tough the times actually were. Um, I was living at my cousin's place at the time. Um, I I was pay obviously I was paying the rent and stuff like that. I hardly had any money for it. There was one particular day where I was still going to the gym and I walked from Norfolk to Shepherd's Bush so that I could save money to eat. Me, Ben, and my other mate, Manny Norte, we used to train together and I didn't want to lose that because I loved training with them. That was like, a thing that would give me a bit of release. And they didn't really know what was going on at the time. So I walked from Norfolk to Shepherd's Bush. Now, for people who maybe not don't understand how far that is, put it this way: it's a 3.5 hour walk. Yeah. It's a 3.5 hour walk and it is a 15-minute train ride. Yeah, it's a 15-minute train ride and a 3.5 hour walk. So just to save money, I did that so then I could get the bus back and then get something to eat and whatever. Now, it's weird because I've always had the privilege of having my mum, my bonus dad, and my dad around, but my pride wouldn't allow me to discuss what was going on at the time. Do you get what I'm saying? I just wanted to just handle it. Um, the last bit of money that I had to pay my rent, out of pure shame, I would pay the rent to the person who I was paying the rent to, but I'd go and deliver it at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd just post it through that person's letterbox because I didn't, because it was always late. I just didn't want them to be like, like it's another thing, like, oh, you're always late or whatever. I just go there at 2 o'clock in the morning, post it through the letterbox, and just walk back home. But I just always knew somewhere in my mind, this is temporary. This cannot be forever. And one day I had dinner. Like Benny called me to have dinner with him, and then he just said to me, he was like, "Are you happy?" And I was like, my first thought was when he asked me that, "Why are you asking me that?" I said, "Yeah." I said to him, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I am." But I thought, why is he asking me that? And then he was like, "No, don't just answer. Like, think about your answer and then tell me like how you feel in it." So obviously in my mind, I'm like, this is weird. Like we never really talk like that. But obviously I'm not happy. I'm really going through it at a moment. And then I just told him. I was like, you know what? Once I pushed all of that to the side, I just told him exactly how I felt, what was going on, and whatever. And we had a really powerful conversation, which really helped me in the long run. I think it also confirmed my belief that this is a character building thing for me, and there's something else out there for me. I've just got to persevere. I've got to figure it out, persevere, and things will happen. And later on down the line, it did.
I've heard that a few times actually with guys when they're talking. It's asking that second time. It's how are you doing, but never take the first answer. Always follow up and
Yeah,
ask again because that's generally where you'll get the real
100%.
answer coming out from.
100%.
It sounds like what really helped you is the fact that you were loving what you were doing. And although there was an idea of what success and failure looked like, it almost seemed like you were focusing slightly less on that and more on the journey that you were on and actually enjoying what you were doing and living for the moment and letting that take you where it was going to take you rather than being so obsessed with what the end game looked like. Would that be fair to say?
100%. 100%. And the thing is, yeah, what had been a pro and a con, because I mentioned the money element before, I didn't care about it. I just wanted to do what I enjoyed doing. Yeah. But we live in a society where you need it a bit. So, like there were times where all I wanted to do was just be on the ride and just enjoy. And also I understood that my life is not necessarily going to be, okay, this is what you do and you just see that out for the rest of your life. It was always going to be essentially, imagine there's like a sunset, yeah, and you're driving down the road and you're driving towards the sunset, yeah. The sunset you can use as a metaphor for like some type of success or like, the end part of it, the end game. Even though there's not an ending until you pass away, until you transcend. But like, I'm driving down the road and I might take a left turn and I might see what's down this left road, this turning on the left, and I might be like, I don't know if this is for me. Then I get back on the road that I was on before. I drive down the road a little bit. Then I might take a right turn. I see a right turn. Let me drive down there. I drive down there, and I'm like, oh, this is all right. I like this. This is a bit of me. So then I keep driving down that road a little bit. So that has been a little bit of like how my life has been, where it's like I am working within a spider diagram. Do you know what I mean? And there's like all these different legs, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, yeah, this leg, I like this one. Nah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I like this one. This is for me. And all of those things are like taps into who I am as a person, you know?
Yeah, and I love that because I think sometimes you feel like it might be a little bit late to try something. But actually, as you were saying there, it's not about just thinking about one path that you're on for the rest of your life. It's about different ideas and different inspiration of new things that you can try, and who knows where that will lead you. So
100%. And also, you might be forced to come off a journey that you were on, but it's all right though, because there's another one.
before we dive back into the episode, if you're enjoying these conversations, please do hit that subscribe button and leave a review. These two actions really make a huge difference and help the show reach more people who can benefit from these discussions. Let's keep building this community together. Thanks for being part of it. Back to the episode. Talk to me a little bit about within the job that you're in. Obviously, everyone will have an opinion on you and just the kind of like the music industry in general. And you're obviously a very popular figure, but I'm sure it comes with some level of scrutiny and probably criticism along the way. How do you deal with that? Like maybe comments that come into you on social, whatever it is. How do you process all of that?
Yeah, so I started doing the podcast, but that started to become a thing, and me and Poet were like just having these really unfiltered conversations about music, and that this was now the time where I'm opened up to other people having comments on what we're talking about, and at first it's like quite fun because you're like it's engagement. You're seeing the engagement happen. People are talking, so some things are really positive and some things are really negative. But the negative things can really affect you, and the positive can really, really affect you too. I think that's the thing that, like, like sometimes when people talk about the comments, yeah, and you'll usually hear people say that the negative comments can really affect you. Well, the positive ones really affect you too. And I read a book called The Four Agreements, and this book was the most helpful book for me at this point in time, at that point in time, and all the way up to now. And one of the agreements, one of the things that it talks about is don't take it personal. And this chapter really resonated with me because essentially, essentially what it was saying was is that when you are if you're doing a line of work and people have a lot of negative things to say, or let's just say like you are passionate about something and people have a lot of negative things to say, it goes into this thing about like why you shouldn't take it personal, but then it also flips it on the other side as well, where if it's really positive, you don't want to necessarily hold on to all of that external positivity, because with the line of work with what I do now and doing a podcast, it's like, and this is probably the simplest way to break it down. It's like, if I do a podcast and in the comments, everyone's saying, "Oh my God, Chucky was so funny. He was so smart. He said this. This was amazing. That was so good. These are all of the things that are so." And there's thousands of them, and I'm reading them, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is who I am." When I go back on the podcast the next week, I'm gonna try to be the funny guy, the smart one. But that might not be how I feel that day. That might not be who I am that day. I might just not be that person that day. And it's fine to not be that. So I think that like sometimes when you're doing that, it's like I had to then say to myself, I'm not going to spend too much time looking at these type of things because I don't want it to affect how I am when I'm recording my content. So if it's negative, I don't want to go into the studio thinking, like people think that I'm stupid, or people don't think that I'm funny, or people don't think that I'm this. But I also don't want to go into the studio thinking I need to be the funny guy. I need to be, because everyone thinks I'm funny. Everyone thinks that I'm really smart. People really like my takes and all of that. Nah, it's just really about like being honest, being true to who I am, learning, understanding that I'm not always gonna have. It's not always gonna be right. It's not always gonna be good. It's not always gonna be great. But though, if I do this from a point of trying to just be the best version of me, this is gonna come through a lot of different avenues than being addicted to comments. So ultimately, to answer that question, I actually don't read a lot of comments.
I think that's just super relevant though for everyday life too. I think,
100%.
as you said there, being true to yourself and not letting positive or negative comments get you too high or too low, just trying to have almost like a baseline that you can always come back to, because otherwise life just becomes so sporadic and you sort of, it's very easy to lose yourself. So whether you're hosting a podcast or whether you're going into work or how you are with the kids or how you are with your friends, whatever it might be, just trying to remember and stay true to yourself. And you know, there's only a certain point that you can do that. There's always going to be comments, positive or negative, that are going to affect you in
100%.
some way. But I think the skill is just trying to learn to minimize how much impact that has on you.
Yeah, because it can be very addictive. That's the element. It
Right.
can be very, very addictive. So there's some of it you can't avoid, and sometimes it is useful. Sometimes it is good to find and to see the temperature in the room. Sometimes it's good to do that, but you have to just be very careful in how much you are consumed by it because it can really, really affect you.
I want to move on now to bonus dad,
Yes.
Peter.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about who Peter was and what relationship that you had with him.
Peter was my, you know what? He was like a light in shining armor. Like he came in and I don't remember the day. I don't remember the day that he came. My mum integrated him very well into my life. Um, but he was just a father figure, an electrician, um, but a community man as well. He was a man of his community. Shepherd's Bush, that's where he grew up. You know, you could speak to Peter for 2 minutes and you'd know he's from Bush. You know what I mean? Um, he's a man who loved his mom, loved his family. Um, I think having a family as well where there's a lot of opinions, a lot of strong characters and stuff like that, you could kind of see that Peter might have been the one who was like the neutral in the middle that everyone would sort of come to in a sense. But he was also a man who he would sometimes he would say stuff and he would come across a bit rude because he was very direct. He was very direct and very blunt, but you know, he came in and he loved my mum essentially, and through that, through loving my mum, he just loved me. I think he kind of stepped in and was on this vibe of I'm really into this woman, and this is an important part of her life. So this is now an important part of my life. Do you know what I mean? And that was the house that I grew up in amongst that. And my dad got on really well with him as well.
Yeah, I think when I look back at Peter, I think large than life. He was
Oh man.
and I feel like that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but if you knew Peter, I mean, he really was a large than life character in every sense of the word. He really was. He was just hugely energetic, hugely passionate, and as you said, sometimes that could come across like a little bit rude and a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
blunt, but that was just who he was. And when you got to know him, you just appreciated him for that.
He was a doer as well. He just
He
got
was.
things done. He just got things done. If you needed something to be done, he just got it done.
Talk to me about the day that you found out about his cancer diagnosis. Where were you? What were you doing? And what were your initial feelings when you first heard the news?
Um, I was in Germany. I was tour DJing for artists at the time, and I got a phone call saying that yeah, like something had been going on because he'd been slurring his words and stuff like that. So they needed to do some tests and stuff. So that was kind of the first initial thing. Um, and he was in hospital. When I came back from that tour, I went straight to the hospital, and because they were saying that there was something going on with his brain. And I just remember him being in the hospital, and he was just like, "Yeah, it's weird because obviously he feels fine. Like it just it's weird. They're saying there's something going on, but he feels completely fine. So yeah, I remember that it then being like after the tests, he would um they would come back with the result of what it actually was. And yeah, I remember the day when I was at home and they kind of came back from getting the results, and yeah, it was yeah, the atmosphere was just like you wouldn't really believe, bro. It was just something that I was just not used to. They just came back in and they were just like, yeah, basically in a nutshell, um, if he has the surgery, he will get like 15 or 16 months. If not, he might get a year. And so I just kind of kicked into this, like, you know what? Well, let's stick together in it and let's just um, make this ride as comfortable as possible for each other. And, you know, we'll have some faith. Whatever is going to be is going to be. Do you know what I mean? I just kind of looked at it like, you never know. I was always on this thought of like, "Oh, you just never even know what can happen." I wasn't blind to the fact that that outcome could actually happen soon. But I did think, oh, like maybe something could happen, or in a weird way, like I could die. Do you get what I'm saying? Like like there's so much different things that could happen within a year and a half that can change the course again. Do you know what I mean? We just got to live in for the moment and make him as comfortable as he possibly can be in this time. Do you know what I mean? So, and one of those things was like a little bit of normality, a little bit of normality, not like having doom and gloom, but having a space for him to talk about whatever he wanted to talk about. If he wanted to talk about it, he could talk about it. Um, but if he didn't want to talk about it, we could just talk about normal stuff. Like it wasn't, no one weren't sitting there and like, well, I just didn't like the idea of kind of sitting there and looking in his face and doing all that because I know that he wouldn't really appreciate that. But yeah, after he had his surgery, so he got diagnosed October 2018. No, 2019. Yeah, October 2019. He had his surgery in December. That's where he lost his speech. He lost, as you know, his words were a bit all over the place, and then COVID happened. So, and COVID was a major blessing. I know it was a really difficult time for so many people, but it was such a blessing because I got to spend that whole time essentially with him and look after him. So yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster to say the least. I'll tell you that.
I remember when I got the news, and my wife was pregnant with Eleanor, our first child, and we'd actually had to go to hospital because there was potential complication. I mean, everything was fine, but we were a little bit nervous at the time, so we went to hospital. And then I got the message from your mum about this as well. So it was just a very surreal day. I think naively, because of the kind of character that Peter was, because he was such a big character, you just always in the back of your mind think, oh, but he'll be fine. You know what I mean? Just because of the type of person that he is, you just think, we'll find a way through it. And you do hold on to that for as long as you can, I guess. But then, as you said, things obviously started to take a turn, and it was clear. Obviously, it was just about making it about the quality of time.
100%. Yeah.
Did you you were talking there about trying to keep things as normal as possible? Did you feel like the dynamics of the relationship changed at all during the illness, or were you able to keep it as normal as possible for quite a while?
Nah, I mean, like, so his personality started to change a bit, and part of it was obviously due to frustration, and then other part of it was the illness. So if there was any change there, it was seeing that side of him a bit. But a lot of that actually ended up being the illness. So it became, for me, it became easier to deal with when the palliative team came. That was the only question I asked. I said, these are the things that he's been doing in recent times. So he would like kick out, he'd get frustrated, he would swear, all of these things. Yeah, like is that frustration, or is it part of the process? Is it like a thing that's happening with the brain? And they said it's a thing that's happening with the brain, and it explained exactly what is happening. So for me, it was like it just made it. If he swore or got frustrated, or I'm trying to do something and he's kicking out, it didn't affect me because I know I've had so many years with this man. Like that's not who he is, really. Do you know what I mean? That's not the type of thing that he would do. He wouldn't ever in life try to kick me if I was trying to help him in something. So you could kind of see that that was all part of the tumor. So if it didn't change the way that I saw him or the love in the room or anything like that, it made it very difficult for my mum to deal with because it was just a change that was very unfamiliar, like majorly unfamiliar. But he was just so taken care of. We just made sure that we really took care of him, and taking care of him meant, you know, sometimes not getting very much sleep, you know. Um, yeah, and that was really difficult, and I was juggling that along with filming content. So, I'm going out and I'm filming content, and people just have no idea what is going on in my house. They got no idea, no idea.
I think that's something that a lot of people listening will be able to relate to as well. Almost this mask that you have to put on, whether it's if you're losing someone or if something bad is going on, and just having to put this mask on and just pretend like everything's okay. I mean, how did you even begin to balance all of that? Like huge career, as you were saying, like filming content, very much in the public face as well. So it's not like you kind of like almost hide away. You were very much there and present. As you were saying, you've got your mum then to support as well. You've got your own emotions and everything
Yeah.
going on as well. Like how did you even begin to balance all of that?
A mixture of having some incredible people around me, like my close friends in particular, and a couple of my cousins, like they were just amazing. Like in regards to either just listening, asking me how I was, and just listening, or helping me understand the perspective. Do you know what I mean? That was another thing. Um, but outside of that, perseverance, and love. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I was able to do a lot of what I did at the time because it was just love. I loved Peter. So it was nothing that was happening there was difficult for me to do. Not one thing. It was easy because I loved him. He looked after me. So it was an honor to look after him now. Um, I loved now at this point I had filmed some documentaries with Vice. Like I was really enjoying that, and I was able to go and do still some more stuff with them and film pods and do branded stuff or whatever, and I really enjoyed doing it, so it wasn't a difficult thing for me to do. But I think that just in those little interim periods, I just needed to either meditate, or I needed just a couple of moments to mentally get myself in the right frame of mind for when I go outside. And to be fair, when I think about it, yeah, leaving the house meant, okay, I've got a job to do. Sim, I'll jump in my car and I'll race down there. I'll race down there and I'm in it because I'm in this vibe now. I want to go and film the content, whatever, do whatever it is that I'm doing. The second it's done, I'm out. I'm racing back home and I'm back in the comfort and I'm chilling with Peter. Because that's what I wanted to do.
I think that's an important point. So it's almost keeping the two worlds separate, right? It's like
Completely.
when you're doing your job, and everything in that moment is about doing your job. When you're with Peter, it was about being with Peter. You weren't thinking about what was going on, or the next piece of content you need
No.
to film. So it was all about sort of like being in the moment and being present for whatever that situation was.
Yeah, and every with like the work that I was doing outside, a couple of the guys that I worked with knew what was going on. So if I was filming content, by the time I got there, everything was set up and it was pretty much ready to go. So once I get there, we could just start, and then once it was done, I could just leave.
Talk to me a little bit about the day that he passed, um, and when it really started to hit home, that he'd gone, and how you were feeling at that time.
So, getting closer to the time of him passing, this was a crazy time, by the way, because 2021, so January, his Peter's mum died, which was very sudden. Um, and then in February, a month later, my granddad, my mum's dad, died. And in and around this time, Peter was basically incoherent, wasn't really understanding anything, couldn't really do anything. So in March, he was just in bed. We had a hospital bed downstairs in the house, and and yeah, he had his eyes closed a lot. And then the actual day, I was in my room, and my mum said to me, she called me, um, and I went downstairs, and she said his eyes open, and I think something's happening. So when I went into the front room, he had his eyes open. He looked comfortable. He didn't look like he was stressing or anything like that. So I was just like, I just put my arms around him. I literally just sort of put my arms around him. I had my hands like sort of around his head, and I was just talking in his ear, just saying like thank you. I just was thanking him for everything, for him for looking after my mom, looking after me. My mum sort of was like holding his waist and that as well. We were just talking to him, and cuz like he literally just stopped breathing while we was talking to him. He literally just stopped breathing, and then me and my mum sort of stopped talking, and we just looked, and we was like, yeah, we think he's gone. And then that was like a big emotional thing for us. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it was yeah, yeah, man.
What has helped process that loss? I mean, we've spoken about this quite a lot in terms of different things that you've looked at and different things that you've tried. And I think that different things work for different people, right? Like therapy, friends, career, exercise, whatever it might be. I'd like to get a sense of sort of like what's worked for you, and how that's helped alleviate and process some of what's happened.
Um, I think like when it happened at the time, I was like wanted to just make sure my mum was all right. Do you know what I mean? And I got to like big up my dad's family as well, because they were the first ones at the house when Peter had passed away. Like my aunties and my uncle, my cousins had come over, and we prayed. It was special. But um, after that, my friends again, because I didn't really have therapy like that. But my friends weren't my therapists, but they were just good. Like they just got amazing minds. Do you know what I mean? And understand, and maybe that might even be down to them having therapy, so they know what to do when it was time to talk to me. But I've just had the benefit of being able to have unfiltered friendships. Like I don't think if I ring Ben or I ring Wesley or whoever, I don't feel like, oh, if I'm feeling emotional, I can't really be emotional on the phone because obviously I'm a man and I gotta nah. If we're talking and I feel like that and I'm gonna cry or whatever it may be, I'm comfortable to do that. So those were like that was a good help to me. And I think over a period of time, after being able to speak about it and just ponder on it myself, um, a lot of the time now I just reflect on a lot of the good stuff that's happened. So those are the things that really keep you warm when it gets cold outside. And I mean that as a metaphoric. term. When you start feeling like that, I go back and I think about all of those funny things that happened or just good things that happened or whatever, and it just I look back at everything with a fun heart. Do you know what I mean? But yeah,
I think one of the things that really impacts me is obviously not having him in my life, but not having him in the kid's life. That for me is almost as big because I feel like they're being deprived of not having him in their lives because he would just be such an amazing figure for them. And obviously, there's nothing I can do about that. And I want to come back to something you were saying there around feeling open and comfortable about talking to Ben and others and sharing your emotions. Like, how do you think that you've got to that state where you feel comfortable about doing that? Is that just longevity of the friendship? Is that experiences that you've had? Is it trust? So you trust these guys so much that you can know that you can say anything? Because I feel like sometimes you can have people in your life, but you're not really sure how to open up to them or if they're the right people to open up to. Like, I had a really interesting conversation with a specialist in male friendships, and he was explaining to me that there are different types of friends that you have. And there are certain friends that just fundamentally, they're not the kind of friends that you're going to be very open with, but they offer something else in that
yeah,
in your life. So how do you know, how did you know that these were the right people to be able to open up and be like that with?
um, yeah, like I can't because you're so right. I think there's people that I've known for a very, very long time. I just wouldn't necessarily open up that same way. But they do offer something very different, and they're still my friend. But I think in the time that me and let's say Ben, for example, spent together as friends, we just experienced a lot of things, and we gradually talked about them. So it wasn't like an immediate open thing, but it was just like, one thing would happen, and then we would kind of talk about it, and then another thing would kind of happen, and we kind of talked about it, and then it's like it's the way in which we then talked about it, which then built that trust for me to know that yeah, like I feel safe to chat to him. There's a level of safety that a person can offer you that makes you feel like that. Do you know what I mean? And I think I definitely offered that to him. I offered that to my friends, and yeah, I think over the time, going through a couple of things and being able to have an open conversation about it, then makes you think. And also adding to the fact that I have known him for a long time. I'm understanding and learning certain things about myself too. Yeah, and then it's almost like when if you do get to a point where you can discuss certain things, you kind of unlock a level, and then you go through something else, and then you have a certain type of conversation, and you unlock another level, and then before you know it, it's like, nah, man, I can talk about anything to this person. And there's other people where you're like unlocking the level, and then it's like you get to a point and you just you can't unlock that. You just can't unlock it, and you may not be able to figure out why, but you just it's just that's where it goes, and that's fine.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that way, actually, but you're right. I can think of that with my own friendship group as well. And I think sometimes that's maybe stressed me out a little bit because I thought, why can't we get to that, as you said, that next level? But actually, it's about realizing that you've got to the right level with that friend, and actually, there's some brilliant things they're bringing to your life, and just appreciating that rather than trying to force something that's not there. And as you said, it is about creating that safe environment. I think particularly as men, we need to feel like we're in that safe environment
Yeah,
where we are able to open up with something, and obviously that comes with trust as well.
yeah, yeah.
How has your perspective on um, death and mortality maybe changed since Peter? Do you view life in a different way? Do you live in a different way? Like, how has that sort of impacted you, would you say?
We've always talked about death. Maybe not Peter, but my mum has. And I think that like it's very different when you're immediately going through it. So you can say and prepare as much as you want to prepare. But when you go through it, it's just a whole next thing. Yeah. But for me personally, I've always looked at the fact that we are in, at the time of recording, it's 2025. This is just my mind. Yeah, it's 2025. We can all agree that human civilization has been going on for millions of years. Yeah, but let's just, for argument's sake, say that it started 2025 years ago. In the greater scheme of numbers, it's not a lot. There's a number, there's a 50,000 number, there's a 100,000 number, there's a 600 million number. Yeah, we get about 80 if we're lucky. We get about 80 if we're lucky. That's not a lot. That is not in the greater scheme of numbers, it is just not a lot. So in that, it's like, what am I doing with the 80? What am I doing with the 80? Can I do some stuff that makes people feel good? Can I leave something for somebody? You know, can I just have a good time some way? Um, can I learn some things about myself? Can I help somebody? Like, I'm gonna just try and fill my life in within doing stuff like that, because you know, at one point I'm gonna go, and also, my mum's gonna go one day. That's something that if I don't go, I'm gonna have to deal with. I'm gonna have to deal with. It's funny. There's a depending on how you look at this, can seem very morbid, or it could be quite funny. But it's like, sometimes having loads of friends and family is not always the best thing. Do you know how many funerals I gotta go to? It's crazy. If I don't pass away, I gotta go to so many of them. But but also at the same time, it's a beautiful thing, because it's like for me, I thrive off community. I thrive off community, and my friends and my family and people outside and stuff like that have helped to shape my life, and I'm just grateful to them and stuff. So I am just trying to live as fruitful as I possibly can, and I'll cross all of the other bridges that are definitely coming when they come.
If you could say one thing to Peter today, what would it be?
What is it like? Do you know why? And I'm so proud to say this. I told him everything. I told him everything. There isn't a thing that's in my mind right now that I have not told him. I've told him everything. He, prior to his illness, and even if he was conscious at the later stages of his illness, would have heard everything from me. Um, and that transparency was there, and I knew it back. So now it's just, what's it saying? Is everything good over there? That would literally be, and he'd laugh. I know he would laugh, but that would be the type of conversation I'd be having with him. And I mean, at the end of it, I would naturally just, let him know that I miss him and all of that. But if Peter was around me, even now, he would just hear me say it, because I just say it when I'm at my events. Like, sometimes before I step on stage, I think about Peter. I think about David as well, because David, my cousin, was passed very early on in his life. Like, they still come up. You might, now that I've told you this, you might notice this sometimes. Yeah, if you ever see bits of footage of me, like if I'm on stage playing music or whatever, and I have my hands up like that, that's usually the point where I'm like, this is sick, innit? Like, I'm saying it to them. Like, this is crazy.
I want to finish our conversation today around this idea of identity, because you're obviously you're such an interesting person, and there are so many strings to your bow, and it's an area that really fascinates me, because I think people will talk about their identity in so many different ways, and for you it could come in so many different forms: where you grew up, your roots, your career, music, your friends, football. It could be so many different things. What areas really shape the fundamentals of who you are, would you say?
My community. Immediately, my community shaped me. They obviously they say like it's a village that raises a child, essentially, yeah, which is a good and a bad thing because when you go outside, you can be exposed to some things that you should not really be exposed to, yeah. But my community, my community really, really shaped me through the things that I was around, the people that I was around, the music I was listening to. One of the reasons why I even pod in the first place is because I always had these memories of my mum and Peter listening to a radio station where reggae music would be playing, and they would always talk about what they were wearing at the time, what was happening politically at the time, the things that they were interested in, the arguments they were having with so and so, and all that. And that, to me, that's interesting. Music has I have so much emotional connections to music. I can listen to a song and it can take me to a certain place and all of these type of things. But yeah, my community has really, really, really shaped me, and it's so diverse because I come from a Caribbean background or Jamaican background, and in which in some senses, like obviously I feel I have a strong connection to Jamaica. I go to Jamaica like that. When I go to Jamaica, I feel comfortable in Jamaica, and I feel like a black Caribbean when I'm here. But I also feel very black and British. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of things that were happening around the time that we almost just had, we put in a pot and it was like ours. We were creating our own thing, the way that we were speaking a bit. Do you know what I mean? We take stuff from where we came from, but we had our own way of speaking, our own way of dressing, the music that we was creating, the people and that I was around, the food that I'm eating, like all of this has essentially had monetary value. I have been able to financially benefit from talking about my experiences. And my experiences is ultimately my community and my relationships, my family, all of that stuff, music and all of that. I've been able to make a life out of that. So, and I tell people this, I say to like young people all the time, yeah, when they're trying to find their way into whether it be music or whatever, I say to them, listen, understand that everything that you're around right now has monetary value. Everyone wants to know what you're thinking. They want to know what you're around. They want to know what you like. They want to know what you're wearing. They want to know what you're listening to. They want to know what you're into. You essentially are the drivers of that. Do you know what I mean? It's about knowing and understanding that. So yeah, I think I understood that a lot later on. I just was just doing it. But yeah, for me, the community has been a massive part of like shaping who I am.
And I guess that probably helps keep you relatively grounded as well, because I was going to ask, balancing your public persona as Chuckie
Yeah,
with who you are as Lloyd.
yeah,
And I guess your community and being so rooted in that all of your life is probably one of the ways that you do stay grounded and stay almost true to yourself.
yeah, definitely, 100%. And ultimately, my community made me Chucky. Do you know what I mean? So it's just another part of my personality. It's just another part. It's another layer of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but it's a big part of who I am. Um, and I'm very proud of that. To be honest with you, like I'm very, very proud of that. I'm proud that it means something. Um, and I'm also proud that I'm layered in that as well.
How much of who you are, how you see yourself, is tied into what you've achieved professionally versus what you've maybe achieved outside of music in your personal life?
Essentially, and I mentioned this before, it's like a lot of what I have done personally and privately have been a part of my achievements in a sense that like see, like with podcasting, for example, that has had a lot to do with just me being me
Hmm.
and talking about where I've come from or my perspective, my my friends, things that I've read, my community, my family, all of these things have helped to shape my perspective in how I see things. And then I go and I take that and I talk about it. Do you get what I'm saying? And which has essentially helped me to achieve some stuff. But you know what? Aside from that, when I push that aside, like one of the things that I think could be a little bit of a misconception is that I can be very reclusive too. So, like, I need alone time to be able to be the person I am outside. If I don't have that, then I can't give that. I need everything for me is about having the right balance. So, so yeah, I think like that's probably the only thing that some people would be surprised. And then maybe add into the fact that I am really heavily invested in court cases. I just love court cases. But even then, I talk about them. So, yeah,
Chucky, my last question for you today.
yeah,
When you think about legacy
yeah.
and ultimately what you want to leave behind as your legacy, what would you want that to look like and how would you want to be thought of?
I would love for people to see how much perseverance can do something for somebody. For me, like a lot of where I am today has come through perseverance and I could also say in that sense that with the line of work, it's always been about making people feel good and creating these experiences that people either look to for either some type of comfort, again, to confirm a belief, to understand some stuff. But ultimately, for me, it was just a giving back in some way to the people that come from where I come from and just making people feel good. Do you know what I mean? But ultimately, Sim, like all I've ever tried to do is just work on being the best that I could potentially be in and amongst being a good person. Do you know what I mean? And whatever happens outside of that is what happens. But perseverance has just been the major thing for me. So if anyone was ever to see and summarize anything from me, I would love them to see that like perseverance can be inspiring. And I hope that whoever is going through whatever it is that they're going through, they understand that like life at the best of times is turbulent. It's going great for me at the moment, but I'm gonna go through a turbulent time again at some point. I don't know what that looks like, but it's gonna happen again. But I can persevere through that again. Do you know what I mean? And if you're going through something or somebody is going through something, perseverance will definitely help you. But also if you can find whatever is your safe space where you can talk about some stuff that can really help you and each one teach one. We'll always get some information based upon feelings and conversations and stuff like that that can help other people, which is why I think this is really good. Information is great, and I've just tried to pass on a lot of that information too, as well as learning it. So yeah, like you know, I'm relatively comfortable, Sim. I really am, and I'm very grateful for the people that have been along the ride with me and supported me and stuff like that, and yeah, we'll see what happens in the end.
Chucky, thank you so much for your time today. You really are an inspirational figure to a lot of people, and you've been always a very inspirational person to me growing up.
Yeah.
And as ever, you've just been your authentic self. And I think the way that you have spoken today, as I knew you would, will resonate with a lot of people and hopefully help them maybe process some stuff that they might be going through, but also just to kind of get to know you a little bit more as well. Thank you so much.
Nah, thanks, cuz. Appreciate it. And sick. Well done, man. I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm glad that you're doing this.